Hello everyone, my today's lecture is on a poem by Robert Kroetsch, that is I Am Getting Old Now. Kroetsch is a Canadian poet. So let us first have a brief introduction of the poet. Robert Kroetsch occupies an illustrious position in the gallery of the 20th century Canadian literature. He is a poet, novelist, editor, teacher, all rolled into one. He is renowned for his adept use of postmodern techniques in his writings. His poem Birthday, June 26, 1983, and I Am Getting Old Now spins around the mother son relationship. The presence of the poet, who is in his childhood, is captured in both the poems, and his intimate bond with his mother is clearly portrayed. But these poems differ in the technique the poet has used to portray his childhood and the image of his mother. In Birthday, it is framed in the form of a photograph, while in the poem I Am Getting Old Now, it is portrayed in the shape of a dream. Both the poems deal with the evolution of time and effect on the poet by bringing in the contrasting images of his childhood and agility. The poet, who has grown older than his mother, also occupies a significant place in both the poems. Thus, many similarities can be traced between both the poems, and most significant among them is the representation of time, that is, the past and the present. The Robert Kroetsch is regarded as a stalwart figure in Canadian literature. His poems are innovative in their themes and techniques. He has written diverse experimental poems and is positioned gallantly in the seat of the avant-garde poets of 20th century. Digging into the past appears as a recurring imagery in the most of his writings, which are most often interlaced with the notions of myth and memory. The introduction to Canadian Voices states that the most successful poet who effectively converted postmodern attitudes into poetry is Robert Kroetsch, emphasizing his mistrust of fixity and reaching out into archaeological past. Kroetsch creates a poetry of discontinuities within history and personal imagination. Okay, so this is a brief introduction about the poem, the poet. So now let's move on to the poem I Am Getting Old Now. I Am Getting Old Now is a poem about past and present. It's a poem about time. It's a poem representative of time, how life changes, and when we are near to our old age, how we become a child once again, and how we behave like a child once again. I am getting old now. I can tell. I dream a lot of my mothers, because when we are going into, when we ourselves are entering into that position of understanding the role of a parent in our life, we can understand better what was their importance in our lives when we were their children, when we were their kids. So I am getting old now. Now my age is advancing. Now I'm getting old now. I can tell. And how he realizes that I dream a lot of my mother, and because nowadays I dream much about my mother. In my dream last night she was in the garden over the hill. In my dream last night. So last night he is recalling a dream of the last night where she was in the garden over the hill. Okay, so he imagines in his dream he has reached to a garden, to a hill. Behind our house she was standing, and I was playing in pea vines. Like, the mother is again young, the mother who is not no more with him now is in this dream is found in a young shape of a young lady, and this poet, who is actually getting old, is shown as a young little boy who is playing in the pea vines. We were both happy, the mother looking at the son and the son at looking at the mother, because the mother has the son and the son has the mother. Both were happy. Neither of us would move in dream. So, and the dream was in a fixed position. It was a portrait like dream where there was no action, but as if they were about to act something. So they were like a portrait. They did not move in the dream, but that image, that portrait of a mother and son realizes or recalls him about his mother and how he feels close to his mother. Perhaps I was not playing, so maybe there can be a situation that he was not playing. I was kneeling to pick peas. Maybe I was just kneeling to pick the peas, or maybe I was playing in the pea. Excuse me. My mother held in her apron the peas, so maybe the mother, because she was carrying in her apron the peas, we had kicked together, we have picked together, both of them have picked those peas together. She was standing still. I knew she was watching me. She was standing still. She was not moving. And the poet knows she was watching him. She was watching me grow. And in the dream, the poet has this notion in his mind that the mother was happy because she was watching her son growing like a bad weed. Like a bad weed, like a bad weed is grass, we can say grass, or some infertile plants which grow among the crops. So like a bad weed who is useless, which is of no use, she liked to say that pleased her. She always liked to say that, look, you are growing like a bad weed, that you are not of any use for me. And it always pleased him. She was always happy when saying this, that you have grown like a bad weed. So I am getting old now, and now I am getting old. If she would have been alive and she would have seen him growing as an old man, she would have loved it. She would be very pleased. I wouldn't say I am happy. The poet does not say that he is happy. The poet does not say he is happy. The poet does not say that he is satisfied in his life. Serene, an adequate word. Rather, it is serene. Serene like I am calm, quiet, cool. Death is not quiet. Death is not quiet. So I don't say that I am happy or I am. He just want to say I am calm because he is getting old now, and in old age we are nearing to our death. Okay, so death is not quiet. Death which arrives to us is not quiet. The enemy it is a kind of watching. It was an enemy. Death, which was an enemy to men when we were young, it is a kind of watching, as if it is keeping a watch on its witness all the time. So death is an enemy and it keeps watching. Death begins to seem a friend that one has almost forgotten. And in old age, when you have grown old, what you feel, that death is not an enemy. It was an enemy for you till now, so far, but now death is not an enemy, and it begins to seem a friend that one has almost forgotten. It is a friend. Now it has become a friend that you have almost forgotten. So this friend is the ultimate friend which is not going to leave your hand ever. Death, it keeps on watching for you. It keeps a watch on you. It keeps an eye on you, and it never forgets you. Okay, and we people, we have forgotten death when we are so much indulged uh, into the things of into the occupations of life, into these beings of life, like that we have forgotten that we are going to die. Why are we doing so many things for this earth, for this short life, which is not going to be a permanent life, which is a very transitory or temporary life, but the life after death is going to be a permanent life, and we are not going to die there, but we have forgotten about that ultimate life, that eternal life, and it begins to seem a friend. So when in our old age we have forgotten a friend which was always existing there, which was always there, always keeping a watch on us, like when your time will come, death will reach to you. Okay, so then remembers again. So we in our old age again remember about the death. In my dream last night I was playing in the garden, and again the poet says that he was in his garden last night playing with his mother. Okay, so this was the poem. Let us now have a brief discussion of a brief analysis of the poem. So the introduction, I'm Getting Old Now presents the poet's acceptance of death. This poem can be described as a simple but vibrant poetic prose poem. Yes, that was a prose poem. We didn't find any poetic qualities in it. The poet also gives expression to his nostalgic dream about his mother. Okay, the logical as well as emotional link between the first part of the poem, the dream, and the second part of the poem, that is death, makes the poem interesting and great. So there is a logical link between the first part and the second part, the dream and the death. Okay, so the dream was about the mother, who is already dead. She is no more in the poet's life, and the second part realizes or makes him think about his own death, which is about to arrive. The poet makes use of a simple language to convey his nostalgia and his views about death. He tries to point out that death is not an enemy of man, therefore, one should not be afraid of death. On the contrary, one should happily accept death as the natural end of the life. The poet admits, if we discuss the summary of the poem, the poet admits that he is about his getting old. He dreams a lot about his mother. He dreamed about his mother last night, who was in the garden and then moved over the hill behind their house. She was standing there and he was fiddling with the pea vines. He dreamed that both he and his mother were happy. Neither of them moved in the dream. He was not playing, rather he was not working in the fields and kneeling to pick peas. His mother helped him collecting peas. She held in her apron the peas that they picked together. She stood still. His mother watched him grow like a bad weed, she likes to say that, and this pleased him. The poet has come back from this dream. Again, he says that he's getting old now, and he's not only happy but he's calm and peaceful also. He feels that death is not his enemy. Death is the natural end of life. It is in the old age that one begins to regard death as a friend. During youth, one invariably forgets death, but one remembers death again in old age, and he remembers that last night he was playing on the garden. So, in the poem on Getting Old Now, the poet presents the memories of the past spent with his mother, and the dream, it is kind of photograph, okay, is replaced, is situated into the dream of the poet. The poet begins the poem by saying, I am getting old now, I can tell. Dreams a lot about his mother. And in the last dream, both the poet and his mother were in the garden behind their house. So he keeps assuming that he is playing or he is picking peas, things he are doing, he is calm and sitting. But now, in the second part of the poem, he does not consider death as a foe. Death to the poet was like a friend who is almost forgotten but remembers then again. Death, though invisible, is an inevitable truth which is always present with living beings. It represents a form of trace where if life is the core, death is a sort of essence. Okay, so the present life of the poet is therefore a sign which will be completed by death, which according to Derridian notion can be regarded as an absent presence. Maybe it is because of the philosophical moorings that the poet accepts the inevitability of death calmly without being scared of it like seeing an enemy, and he concludes the poem by repeating that in my dream last night I was playing again. So the notion of age, time and death is intertwined in the poem. The mother who silently watches him uh, growing can be regarded as a metaphor of time that witnesses everything. In one sense, it was his dream about his mother that persuades him to ruminate about his age and death. In the other sense, it was unconscious thought about his mother that takes the shape of the dreams that subsequently leads to his rumination. The poem also oscillates between different time frames, the past and the present. This again amplifies the significance of the poem. The poem recollects his dreams similar to his collection of peas. Again, so collecting the peas is again a metaphor. The poet dreams about his past and both his mother, and the poet is still in dream, but he suggests that though everything looks motionless, the poet's age is not in a freezed state. He is growing and his mother is watching him. So even when everything appears unchanged, there is something that is changing every day. All the activities appear in a stationary state in the dream, which the poet emphasized by adding that he is not playing but kneeling to pick peas. But the growing poet and the watching mother implies invisible motion. The dream is something that happened in his sleep and it was warded off when he is awake, and hence is a matter of the past. The mother and the poet's childhood, which appears in the poet's dream, is again another matter of the past, but it is these stuffs about the past that persuade him to ponder about his age in the present situation. The past here is represented by the dream of the poet, which can be hazy, and so it depends on his recollection. The hazy dream here may be a symbol of evading memory of the old poet. He is recollecting the pieces of memories like the peas. So there is a comment of Fiona McMahon. She says, thanks to the underlying archival context of Kroetsch's writing, the poem functions as a site of collection or recollection, partaking in an effort to reveal an imaginative site. The dream may be a sort of jigsaw puzzle. It's not sure whether the poet has forgotten any fragment of the dream or replaced it with a new one. The poet's correction that he is kneeling to pick the peas rather than playing in the garden, as he mentioned, can be considered as a remark of the poet's hazy memory. So, the poem resembles a journey from past to present, but simultaneously strains the both between the two, the past and the present. So as we got to know that the poem is a representation of past and present, a connection between past and present, and an acceptance of death, that which is going to be the ultimate reality and ultimate end of the life. So hope you have understood the poem, you have got the idea of the poem. If you have any doubts, you can ask me. Okay, thank you very much.